This is The Recap, a weekly reflection on the sermons of Fellowship Baptist Church in Mainville, Ohio, seeking to help you make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. I'm your host this week, Brent Wilson, with the preacher of this week's sermon, Ryan Tiberius Land.
There you go. The full name, the legal name. Not my legal name, but don't ask me what it is.
and so we're here, Ryan preached this week in our series of the Apostles' Creed. He ascended into heaven, and as Ryan likes, and sitteth at the right hand of God the Father Almighty.
Which then next week we get to go into the archaic language you like.
From whence?
From whence. It's a great word. But we'll get there.
We'll get there.
We don't want to.
Don't tip our hands.
No spoilers.
But first, let's break the ice.
Sorry.
Okay.
Before you break the ice, don't you think it's funny when people talk about spoilers for stuff that's been out for like a super long time?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, don't spoil the Apostles' Creed for me. It's like, bro.
Yep. All right. So you talked in your sermon about this, the ascension being like a load-bearing wall, how important it is. It's essential, whatever. So just thinking about the life of Jesus and these all kinds of different events in his life. So here's my question. If you could go back in time to be present for one event in the lifetime of Jesus, which event would you want to witness?
Well, recency bias. Right. I would say the ascension.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've just been studying it for the past week.
But let's say you can't pick that one.
Okay, I can't pick the ascension. I would want it to be a miracle, I think.
Okay.
Do you think that? Oh, I think it'd be raising Lazarus.
Yeah, that's in my top three.
What's your top three?
Raising Lazarus.
Lazing Lazarus.
Lazing Lazarus.
That's like how Scooby-Doo would say it.
Lazing
Lazarus.
The Mount of Transfiguration.
Oh, that's such a good one. That's something I wanted to talk about this week.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think it's potential. We'll get there. Go ahead.
Okay.
Transfiguration, Lazing Lazarus.
I only really had a top two in my head, but it was in my, so therefore it's in my top three.
That's so funny.
But probably another miracle.
Water into wine. I mean,
just see the party.
Yeah.
Oh, probably maybe Jesus angry in the temple.
Oh, I would love to see that. Yeah.
That'd be fascinating.
But I also think Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
Would be good for me.
Yeah. I feel like I've read the book.
You wouldn't want to watch Jesus preach?
Well, but he's preaching in the temple court. He's like, you tear down this temple and I'll rebuild it in three.
I just think I'd like
calmer
to see
Jesus.
I'd like to take some delivery notes.
Oh,
Are we assuming I can understand Jesus?
Yeah.
Like he's
you
speaking,
got like a translator.
He's speaking like Greek or Aramaic, and I'm like, oh crap.
That would suck. I'm here and I can't understand it.
I didn't bring my flashcards. I'm like, he's talking. I'm like, what tense is that? Like trying to, what is that called when you're doing like the breakdown? I can't remember.
Oh gosh.
Conjugate?
Well, that's what they call it in Spanish.
I almost just said the word conjugate in a Spanish accent.
Can you do it?
What is that called?
Oh gosh.
Rob Plummer, forgive us. That was our.
I'm gonna think about it and come back to it. Okay. I'm in the middle of the podcast. I'm gonna blurt out the word.
Yeah.
So
it ends in 8, right?
It ends in 8.
Like conjugate or
I couldn't tell you.
I can't remember.
Gosh, I don't know. But anyways.
Luckily, no one is listening to this, and they're like screaming the word. Like, how do you not know this
there might be
word?
One.
Who?
I don't know.
Oh,
somebody. I don't know if it's only a Greek thing or not.
Yeah, I don't know either. Does it start with a P?
Josh, type in the chat GPT and ask it when you are breaking down a Greek verb. What is it called? Let us know. While he's looking that up, you talked about.
It's like on other podcasts where they have like a guy.
We gotta
like, hey, pull that, Josh. Pull that up.
We got that research guy back here.
We like pull up a video right here and show it.
Oh yeah, we need to get parsing. That's
it.
It
did start with a P, but it didn't end in an 8.
Yeah.
Parsing 8.
Parsing those verbs.
Yeah. Jeez. Thanks, Josh.
Oh man, Josh, we're gonna start using you for that. That's great. Okay, one of the things you talked about was that the ascension is one of, if not the most neglected aspects of Jesus's ministry or the pillars of his ministry or things like that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think one is like a very just sort of like tangible, I don't know, practical reason. Because like we don't know very much about it. We have one story, it's covered twice. The end of Luke's gospel, where it's like 2 verses, and then this like very brief story in the beginning of Acts, where it's like you have the whole like birth narrative in Luke, and
but no birth narrative in John,
right? But the one in Luke is like
it's pretty long,
super long,
2 chapters,
and we have a whole holiday dedicated to it.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was, you can find a card for all this other stuff in Jesus' life. You can find a Christmas card, you can find an Easter card. Hard to find an Ascension card.
Yeah. Now, am I right that the Catholics really do celebrate the Ascension and kind of the church calendar sort of thing?
So you have Ash Wednesday, 40 days before Good Friday. You have Easter, and then 40 days after that, you celebrate Ascension Sunday. And then 10 days after that is Pentecost.
Penta for 5.
50.
This is what really threw me off at Family Sunday when you asked the question.
You did Pentecost.
I did Pentecost because I was trying to do it fast and I went 50.
Yeah, so if you don't know what we're saying, Jesus is on earth for 40 days, he ascends, then 10 days later is when the Spirit comes at Pentecost to the temple in Jerusalem. So I think practically it's because like we don't know that much about it.
Okay.
But I think a little bit, just kind of on vibes, is like it's just kind of weird. Like it's kind of a weird story, and it doesn't seem like it doesn't change much. Yeah. Like at first glance, it doesn't feel like this actually matters.
It's just
much.
how Jesus is leaving.
Yeah, it's like, did he take the bus? Did he take a chariot?
Yeah.
Or did he float? It's like,
he's got to get out of here somehow.
We know intellectually, he went back to heaven. But we don't really think about the effects that has on us. Yeah. So I think partially it's because we don't know a ton about it, but also because we don't think it matters that much.
All right.
But I think it does.
It does. Well, let's talk about why it does. So first, you talk about what is the ascension. You say the ascension is more than a physical reality; it's a spiritual reality.
Yeah. So it's not a double negative there. It's not a physical reality.
Yeah.
It's like this is interesting that Jesus, I would probably say there's 3 physical bodies in heaven. Jesus's? Who else? Enoch and Elijah, right? And so they didn't die, they never died.
Yeah.
They were taken up into heaven. And so I think that's the same kind of thing going on here. And so, but we're going to talk about heaven more. But so there is a physical reality here. Jesus is no longer on earth. He's physically, bodily moved somewhere else. And in a supranatural way. And so there is a physicality, but and we'll get into this and kind of all the effects of the ascension. But it's like there's a spiritual reality here in that he's transcending nature. He's going beyond nature. And so one of the quotes I didn't use that I wanted to talk about was Yuri Gagarin, the first cosmonaut, Russian cosmonaut, goes into space and he comes back and he gives this famous quote about how, it's like, I saw no sign of God.
I've been to the heavens and I didn't meet God.
And I didn't meet God. And it's like, it's because Jesus didn't ascend there. He didn't ascend to space. Yeah. It's like, this is a spiritual reality. He's ascended to a spiritual realm.
Do you think it is the case? Like when John the Baptist shows up and he's preaching, he's like, the kingdom of God is at hand. It's almost like he's saying, when he says it's here, right? It's all around you. You just don't have eyes to see it. And so it's not necessarily, tell me if you think this is true, it's not necessarily that heaven is above us. It really is all around us. It's just on the other side of a veil, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it's like, I think that can get a little confusing and like maybe a little like, not naturalistic, but like naturalism. Like we worship the plants and the trees, and it's like God is in we can't see him, but like God is in. But I think it could maybe lend itself to that.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's a movie like that. where it's like there's like the two realms like laid on top.
Well,
of
it's
each
kind
other.
of like Stranger Things.
Yeah, like the upside down.
Yeah.
Right. But the earth is the upside down,
Yeah.
and Jesus is going to the right side up.
Yeah.
And he's going to bring the right side up here.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We should write that book. We could probably make a lot of money.
Yeah.
The Gospel According to Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And so, maybe. I'm open to that. But that also, I think, gives it some sort of spatial constraint that I don't know
that's interesting.
that I don't know that I'm into.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, does heaven, never thought about this one time, does heaven is heaven infinite?
Yeah, it's spiritual, right?
Okay.
It's like it's so how do physical bodies exist in heaven? I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Right? And will we have like temporary
When you say
physical
spiritual, do you mean immaterial? What do you mean when you say the word spiritual?
Well, I do mean immaterial, right? Because God is immaterial.
Uh-huh.
God the Father and God the Spirit are both immaterial, and so that's why I'm like I don't actually know how Enoch and
Yeah.
But I think like angels can take on, well, I actually don't know that they're material or not. We don't actually see them interact with the world in the way that Jesus does in his resurrected body.
Well, the only exception to that is well, I guess this is a vision, so that may be, but in Isaiah 6, you see the angel picking up the tongs.
Yeah, but in heaven.
Is
Like
it in heaven?
the throne room, right?
Well, yeah.
Isaiah is seeing a picture of heaven,
Okay.
of the throne room.
Okay.
So he's not seeing, there's not earthly tongs that he's,
Okay.
So
That's weird.
But so anyway, it's like, so I don't know. This is kind of the point I was trying to make when I was talking about Hamlet, is like Hamlet doesn't know anything about England in the 17th century, which is when the play was released.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know anything about it because Shakespeare doesn't write anything about Elizabethan England into the play.
Mm-hmm.
What he knows about is Denmark whenever he is, right?
Yeah.
There's not a specified time. And so in the same way, like we actually don't know that much about heaven because God has not revealed very much about it to us.
We have little snapshots.
Yeah. And so
everything else is inference or guesses.
So Jesus is there bodily.
Mm-hmm.
Angels are there. God the Father is there spiritually. God the Father doesn't have a body.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't know. But so when I say spiritual reality, I mean this sort of idea that he's entering the presence of God, right? I talked about how they would go up to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Moses would go up the mountain. This is the final going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is going up into the as Nate texted me, the Shekinah glory. Chicano. Chicano. It's Shekinah. He was just being funny.
Yeah.
I told him a Shekinah glory was my coffee order. An ice Shekinah glory. But so he goes up into the presence of God. And so it's not just that he goes to heaven, but it's that he goes to this place to be with the Father.
Yeah, where he goes where God is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
That's what I mean.
Where God primarily is.
Yeah, that's what I mean by spirit, by a spiritual reality. Okay. It's not just that Jesus left, right? Yeah. It's what he left to and what he left for, right? It's all of those things together.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about the ascension explodes dynamus explodes the power of Jesus from a specific people at a specific time to a global people for all time.
Yeah. So this is why I wanted to talk about, this is where I want to talk about the transfiguration.
Okay.
Because I think potentially this is, we've talked about this on the podcast before. This is just kind of fun to think about, is that, Elijah and Moses both speak to God directly.
Yep.
And that at the Mountain Transfiguration, Jesus takes on this divine,
he unveils
being.
Himself,
and he takes on this divinity of some sort.
Yeah, and
it's almost actually like he steps out of his humanity for a moment.
Yeah,
it's like he takes off the human.
Like he unzips his skin and
which that's bad Christology, right?
Yeah.
But for simplicity, it's kind of that's what he's doing. And he speaks to Elijah and Moses. And so people have talked about, hey, is Jesus stepping through the space-time continuum here and conversing with Elijah and Moses in the Old Testament?
So is it actually the moment that Moses meets God on top of Mount Sinai?
Yeah.
and sees
Yeah.
only his back. And so
Yeah.
maybe it's because he's talking to Elijah, right? He only sees
he
this.
sees his back. Yeah. And so, but whether or not that's the case, what's happening here in the ascension is the ministry of Jesus is being expanded spatially and temporally in time. In that, to be ministered to by Jesus in his earthly ministry before the ascension, you had to be in a specific place at a specific time.
Yeah.
Right? You had to be around him. That's why the woman with the woman who was continually bleeding, she's got to fight through the crowd to get to him, right? To be ministered to by Jesus, she had to get to him.
Yeah.
And now in the ascension, Jesus has broken the binds of space and time. And his ministry goes backwards and forwards in time, and it goes globally, and eventually, maybe in the future, if the Lord tarries and there's churches and believers in space on Mars or wherever, right? Like Jesus' ministry and his power even goes out.
Yeah. And you would say goes out by the Spirit?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Spirit we see from Acts 1:8 is the mechanism by which.
Yeah. It's what we call the Spirit of Christ.
Yeah, you will receive power, right? And in John 16, he talks about sending the Spirit. Matthew 28, he talks about sending the Spirit. And so, yeah, like the Spirit, I think, is the mechanism by which this happens.
Yeah.
But Jesus has to go up and leave linear temporal reality so his ministry can be expanded across space and time.
And also, if not, everybody would just want to come see Jesus, right? They wouldn't want to listen to anybody else.
Well, it's like Mary. It's like after this, she just clings to him, and he's like, don't touch me, right? Don't
cling to me. You got work to do.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't talk about this. I talked about the Ephesians verse where Paul says the Ephesians, by coming to faith, they heard Jesus.
Yeah.
But our English translation says they heard about Jesus.
Yeah.
And so Paul is actually saying the teaching ministry of Jesus is continuing through the preaching of his word by the power of the Spirit. And so in the same way, at the beginning of Luke, right? So Luke and Acts has these sort of prologues where he's writing to this either guy or sort of literary mechanism, this guy Theophilus. And in the beginning of Acts, right before he tells the story, he wrote, in the first book, I wrote to you all that Jesus began to do and teach about. And then in the very first chapter of that book, Jesus leaves. And so the implication is that he doesn't write, in Acts 1, I'm going to teach you all about what the church did. But no, he says what Jesus began to do. I wrote in the first book, I wrote to you about what Jesus began to do, which implies that in this book, I'm going to write to you about what Jesus continues to do.
Yeah, and he's gone.
And then he leaves, and Theophilus is like, this is a short book.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's actually Jesus is continuing to work and can continue to work because he's no longer bound by space and time.
Yeah.
So that's why the ascension is so important, is because we actually could never have, I don't think we could have saving faith if we could, because we could never, unless we could get to Jesus somehow.
Yeah.
But he's expanded the reach of the effectiveness of his power.
So when you hear the word of God or the word of Christ preached, proclaimed in its truthfulness, you are hearing the voice and the words and the teaching ministry of Jesus.
I think the Old Testament and the New Testament would both affirm that.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think people could be like, oh, whoa, I don't know about that. But I actually think it's why, where does it say, teachers are going to be judged?
Yeah. Maybe First Timothy.
And it's particularly their teaching, right? It's not, it's like not their conduct or whatever, but their teaching. Yeah. Because when we stand up and preach, like preaching, and it's why we can talk about the distinction between preaching and teaching, in the New Testament when Paul's talking about, it's like preaching is not just Bible study. It is a proclamation of the word of God. And that's why teachers will be judged more strictly and all those things. It's like, it's almost like a tier above.
Yeah. And you are continuing what Jesus did and telling people about what Jesus did. And so if you screw that up, you're screwing other people up and you're going to be judged for it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then we talk about what does the ascension mean? You have three things. You say he's ruling, he's interceding, and he's sending. So let's take those one at a time. So Jesus is ruling. What does it mean that he's ruling?
He's measuring things with a rule, 12 inches at a time.
Yeah.
No, it's that and this is where you get to the second half of the statement in the creed, that he's sitting at the right hand of the Father.
Yeah.
So the right hand of the Father, that God the Father does not have a right hand.
Yeah. Metaphor.
Metaphor. And it's an ancient metaphor for power.
Yeah.
Right. You think about the Prime Minister of England sits at the right hand of
the king. Yeah.
Right? And who has the power in England? It's actually the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And you go back even further, right? The Lord or whoever that is most elevated is the one who's going to sit at the right hand of the king.
It made me think about when you were talking about that. I think it's Andrew and John, maybe, who asked Jesus, "Hey, can we sit?"
Is it James and John? Because in one of them, it's their mom.
Well, in the Chosen, it's the mom. I don't know if this is in the Bible or not. In the Chosen, the mom is like, "Y'all need to,
Well, because there's two parallel stories, and one it's the mom asked Jesus, and one it's the two. That's why I think it's James and John because they're brothers, right?
Yeah.
And so are Andrew and Peter.
Yes.
So I think it's James and John. But yeah, hey, can we sit at your right hand?
And he's like, "You don't know what you're asking, right?" It's like takes crucifixion to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, because they knew the one who sits at the right hand is the one who has the most influence, most power, sort of thing.
But then that's like the great thing about that is that we think, Jesus is ruling like the church or whatever, which is true. But Paul talks about in Ephesians by the power of, and he uses this language 2 times, the power of the resurrection and the ascension. He doesn't just say the resurrection. In Ephesians 1, where he talks about the ruling, he's like, he's far above every authority, dominion, power, name above every name. It's like he is the most powerful being in the universe, is Jesus. Like in every instance, in every authority, in every political instance, in every nation, in every world, right? He is the most nothing happens that Jesus does not either decree himself or allow.
Yeah. But let me ask you this way. How is Jesus ruling differently after the ascension than before he ever came?
That's a great question. What would you say?
Well, I think my answer is going to be very amillennial in that he has bound Satan and is empowering, like you were talking about with the unleashing his power, he's empowering the church through the Spirit to go to the nations, so the nations are no longer deceived, right? You think in the Old Testament, the light is only in Israel, and now the light is going out, and he is ruling. When you talk about nothing happens apart from his will. I think that's always been true, right? So it's like now he is the king on the Davidic throne, taking his message out to the world.
And I think sin had sin. This is an interesting question. Had sin been conquered before the resurrection?
No.
Like the power of sin, had it been conquered before the resurrection?
No.
And had the power of death been conquered before the resurrection?
No.
So I think those two things are conquered at the resurrection, right?
And he's got the keys of Hades.
Yeah. And so I think the last enemy to be destroyed is death.
Yeah.
Right. I'm singing the Andrew Peterson song in my head.
Yeah.
And so like in that sense, right, there's no force on earth that he has not conquered.
Yeah.
That he is not over.
It's interesting because I think people's minds will immediately go to like, well, if Jesus was ruling right now, like why are bad things happening? Why are why are political leaders doing things against his will? Like why are people not coming? Like it doesn't necessarily feel like it. And so, Nathan, when we led into our time of greeting, talked about the already not yet. And so Jesus has already accomplished these things, but they're not fully realized. And so there's a sense in which he is still taking ground.
Yeah.
Right. And that that taking ground is coming through the expansion of the church, the proclamation of the gospel, his teaching ministry, the Spirit coming out. And so
we talk about the already not yet in youth group about like, it's like the sun on a cloudy day. Like, is the sun there? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But like on a really clear day, you like cannot look up into the sky.
Yeah.
Right. You'll hurt your eyes.
Yeah.
But on a cloudy day, you can, right?
Yeah.
Because the sun is still there, but we just see glimpses of it coming through through the clouds. Right. And so So it's already there. The Son is there, but it's not yet been fully revealed.
Yeah.
And so its effect is not fully realized on earth.
As the great singer says, I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. But one day the clouds will be gone, we'll have it all.
And when it's cold outside,
I got the month of May. Okay, so he's ruling.
What I want to say is, no, you don't. You don't have the month of May. If it's not May, you don't have it. It can't be December, and you're like, I got the month of May. Mm-hmm. People look like you're crazy.
So he's ruling. He's interceding.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So this is mainly from Hebrew. So Jesus ascended as king, right? Like ascending the throne. Mm-hmm. But then also this idea that Jesus's work is not complete. And you get that from Hebrews 7, where it talks about he saves us to the uttermost, and he uses the word continues, by the continuing ministry of his intercession. And so what is Jesus continually doing for us? Interceding.
Yeah.
And that's in kind of two ways. I think through our prayers, right? So we pray, and Jesus is the intermediate, the intercessor of our prayers.
So someone asked me this, like practically, functionally, if you had to take a guess at this, like what does that mean? Is it Jesus taking our prayers and he's repeating them to the Father?
No, because everything the Son knows, the Father knows, and they both know everything.
Yeah.
I've used this metaphor before. It's like, so you think about the throne, like a throne room. This is a metaphor. God the Father is the king on the throne. I know I'm mixing metaphors here because Jesus is the king, but imagine in this scenario, God the Father is the king. The Son is like the vice regent, who, if anyone comes in and says something untoward or is disrespectful or whatever, it's his job to usher him out of the room. And the Spirit is the guard at the door, so no one gets in that's not supposed to get in. So we as Christians, we're approaching the throne room. We're going to speak to the King. The Spirit, we're into the throne room. We're brought in by the power of the Spirit. So the Spirit lets us in, and then we speak by the allowance or the power of the vice regent, the privilege of the vice regent, right? And so you can almost think of the King as the triune God.
Yeah.
But it's, he's allowing us. And so if we do say anything untoward, or we tend to pray the wrong thing, the vice regent says, it's like, hey, it's okay. Like, they're here because by me, like, this is kind of personal privilege.
Yeah.
For
I kind of think of Jesus like the conduit. Like he's the pipe in which we get to the Father.
Yeah. But I also think that's true of the Spirit.
Yeah. So here's like the cutesy phrase. Like the phrase. Like, I don't know what this all means, but like I would say, we pray to the Father through the Son by the Spirit.
Right? Yeah, I say the same thing. But also, I think it's important to note that it's okay to pray to all three persons.
I was going to ask you this. Yeah.
Right. I think it's okay to pray to the Spirit.
Yeah.
Or to pray to the Father, or to pray to the Son. But I mean, make sure you do that, right? Don't thank the Father for dying on the cross.
Yeah.
Don't mix the persons. But I think you can pray to the Spirit or pray to the Son.
Spirit, give me courage, give me remembrance, or whatever.
Pray to the Father. So it's not like you only have to.
Yeah. There's a normative thing, and then there's
Yeah. But I think all of our prayers are being conveyed with the whole weight of the person of the Son. Right? As if we were like when I make a request of the Spirit, it's not me, Ryan. The weight of it is not just me, Ryan, asking the Spirit, some random dude, it's like the Son, Jesus himself, were coming to the Holy Spirit and making this request of himself.
So it's interesting when you say it like that, because anytime you ask a Catholic, why do you pray to Mary?
Yeah.
They always say, well, Jesus is going to listen to his mama. Right. And so go talk to his mom, and his mom going to convince him to do. And so,
which is a good argument if it were biblical at all.
Yeah. But you're basically saying the same thing, just of Jesus.
Yeah. But I'm not saying it. Well, the author of Hebrews is saying it.
Yeah. And so, but that,
if Hebrews 7 were like, we're saved to the uttermost by the continuing interceding of Mary, I'd be like, okay, we got a conversation.
Yeah. But that's what you're functionally saying Jesus is doing. It's like, hey, when you pray, Jesus is the Father is listening to him. And so when we pray through the Son, in the name of the Son.
But also that the Son is the one with the power to fulfill the thing you're asking for. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Not that anything is safeguarded by the Father.
Yeah.
It's like that it's like, hey, like I'm Jesus, and I'm like, hey, God the Father, he asked, this guy just asked me this, can we do that for him? And God the Father's like, no. He's like, but he really wants it. And God the Father's like, we're not doing that. And Jesus is like, please. He keeps asking, and God the Father's like, no. Like they're united in all things.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah.
Did not expect so much Trinitarian theology today.
Okay.
It's too early for that.
Yeah. Then he's sending. Now, one thing that's interesting, and you talked about Jesus being king. It's interesting when you think about he's ruling, interceding, and sending, because it's almost prophet, priest, and king. So he's king in that 100%
he's
ruling, he's priest and he's interceding, and the sending is his prophetic voice. He's sending.
I would have loved to. It was just too much to unpack. But I would have loved to. That's how Tim Keller talks about it.
Oh, okay.
Tim Keller talks about his prophetic ministry continuing through teaching and through the sending of the Spirit. His priestly ministry continuing in the interceding. His kingly ministry continuing in his ruling. And so that just felt like a lot of imagery to unpack.
Sure.
And so I didn't want to, particularly use those words in those categories. But functionally, it's like the same thing. Like what are the three things? What does the work of Christ look like in light of the ascension?
Yeah.
Well, it's his ministry on earth as our prophet, as our priest, and our king. It's just in a global, universal scale now, rather than a specific one.
Yeah. So anything else about just the sending aspect?
So one thing I didn't get to talk about for time's sake was in John 16. I was like, I didn't want to talk too much about the work of the Spirit because we're going to have a whole sermon on that in a few weeks. But in John 16, he talks about three things that the Spirit, I think it's three things that the Spirit is going to do when he sends, when Jesus sends the Spirit. And it's convict of sin and righteousness. So, and then to reveal truth. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I was going to talk about was if anything I'm saying right now is wrong and unbiblical, the Spirit should be ringing the bells of your head. Like, that's not true. Yeah. That's not true. And so those are there's other things the Spirit does, but in that passage, Jesus highlights, he's going to convict, the Spirit is going to come to convict sin and righteousness. Yeah. So know when we are being righteous, know when we're being sinful, and then guide us in truth. Yeah. And so that's, which is what Jesus was doing when he was on earth. Yeah. He talked about, I think I may have mentioned this, anyone who hears the truth and believes that the truth will set you free. You did. And so the Spirit is now coming to set us free via guiding us to the truth. And so I just think that Jesus highlighted those couple of things in that same text.
It's interesting. I remember reading this book in seminary on the Spirit. And, we read a lot of books that had quite a few footnotes. But this book, was probably half footnotes.
2 sentences on a page and then just footnotes.
Honestly, it kind of was sometimes. And its whole point was the Spirit's job is to point you to Jesus and who he is and what he's about, not to draw attention to himself, which is one of the arguments that I typically try to make against ultra charismatic sort of thing who are always highlighting the Spirit. Yeah. It's like, no. He when you read the New Testament, he does one thing. He's like, look at that guy right there. Yeah. And so it's interesting.
Yeah. Gosh, I just had one more thing to say about, the sending. I wanted to tell this story. It's a J.D. Greer story. And he talks about, it's better that I go and send the Spirit than stay. And he says, no one actually believes that's true because, it's like you run out of your favorite beverage, just go get water out of the tap and Jesus could be there and he'd help you, turn into your favorite beverage or whatever. It's like your dog dies, Jesus right there, boom, bring your dog back to life. Your cat dies, Jesus right there, help you bury your cat. It's so funny. But I do think that's true. And I was like the story, we've already referenced it now of Mary, clinging to Jesus. That's what we would do. if we downgrade the ascension, that's what we do mentally and emotionally. It's like, God, I just wish Jesus was here. And it's like, no, you don't. Like you really want the ascension to be true because the Spirit is here and the Spirit is better.
Yeah. If Jesus was here, only one person can have him at a time.
Yeah.
But because the Spirit's here, we can all have him at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
so I'm looking forward to hearing more about the Spirit in a few weeks.
All right. You're not even going to be here.
I will watch on the live stream.
Okay. You're going to be at kids camp.
I will.
So last thing
2 camps this summer. Let's go.
You talk about what does ascension mean for me?
No, for me.
No, me. But you say it empowers us to proclaim the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
How so?
Well, that just seems like, so like, I would say we talked about this briefly before, like Matthew 28, I think it's a parallel story to this.
To Acts 1:8.
To Acts 1:8, right?
Which you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you.
Yes.
You'll be my witnesses.
You'll be my witnesses in Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. To the same thing as, now I like can't even quote Matthew 20.
Go ye therefore.
Go ye therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the
I
Father,
have to
Son,
say
and the
that
Holy
go
Spirit.
ye therefore.
Yeah.
I can't do it in any other translation.
I was just going to quote Matthew or Acts 1:8 again. Which funny thing about Acts 1:8, I don't know if you ever did. You probably didn't do Bible drill, but we did Bible drill, and when you go, you got.
I wasn't a Christian young enough.
You got to go to state in Bible drill, and if you get a perfect score at state Bible drill, you get a red Bible. That's like was your call sign.
Yeah,
that you won state in Bible drill, and I messed one memory verse, and it was Acts 1:8.
What'd you mess up?
I don't remember.
Oh.
But I didn't. You got to say it word for word exactly right, and I didn't do it. I messed up something up.
Wow.
And they told me to step back. So to say you knew something, you had to step across a line.
Yeah.
And then they randomly called on people.
Oh yeah.
To see if you got it right. So you could,
you could bluff.
Lie, you could bluff, and if you got called out, and so they were like, you got to step back. And so that was the one.
How you been dealing with that trauma ever since?
Still haunts me every time. Every time I open a hardback Bible that's not read, I think I'm such a failure. No, so I think the clear directive of the ascension is get out of here. Go.
Yeah.
Go.
When you did this, I just thought of a turkey. They look up because a turkey will drown.
Yeah.
Looking at the rain. That's what it made me think of.
They probably would have. The disciples probably, if it started raining, they probably would have drowned. Thank the Lord. They should thank God that He sent angels instead of sending rain, because they would have drowned. Looking up, but I think it's also so interesting. The ascension in Luke does not have that part about the angels. So it says Jesus ascends, and they go back to Jerusalem worshiping and praising God or whatever. It's like, well,
who includes it? Matthew?
No, the story in Acts.
Oh yeah.
It includes the further the kind of the expansion of it. And it's like worship and praising with a little bit of nudging. like there was a little.
Wait. You said Luke does not include it.
So the end of Luke, where he talks about the ascension, it says Jesus ascended into heaven, and
but Acts goes back and re-looks at the.
Yeah.
It's interesting being the same author that he does that.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think because
I wonder if he wrote Luke and then got a little more information.
Yeah, or he sees the ascension more as a continuation of the story that he's telling in Acts, and it's not as much as it's kind of like the post credit scene of the Gospel of Luke.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
And then you got.
I love a good post credit scene.
Oh yeah. You think the new Superman movie is gonna have a post credit scene?
I don't know, but this is a great icebreaker question that we should just stop right in the middle of the episode and say, "What's your favorite post credit scene?"
Oh, it's so easy for me.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I have a top 2.
Okay.
I'll never forget. I was like, oh my gosh, dude.
You have such a better memory than me on this kind of stuff.
If this makes me emotional.
Okay.
Like, I had just gotten into comic books. I had been playing this game called Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2.
Yeah, great game.
And so, there's a billion characters in the game. They have all these alternate uniforms, costumes, and they've got which comic book run they come from. And so I'd gotten into that, really into that game. I'd just gotten really into comic books. And so I knew in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, there was a character, Nick Fury. You could play as Nick Fury. And, he looked like David Hasselhoff, and he had the eye patch, and it was blue and white. But there was an alternate costume for Nick Fury, and it was Ultimate Nick Fury. And he was essentially Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah. Who they had just kind of created Ultimate Nick Fury in the Ultimate Universe. Way too nerdy for anyone that listened to this podcast. But I think I was at the drive-in. when we saw Iron Man.
Uh-huh.
And we're like, it's like the drive-in, you gotta like wait to like leave.
Yeah.
And seeing Nick Fury come up on the screen, like Ultimate, and I'm like, he's from Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And then he throws the thing down that's like, I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. I lost my mind. But then the other one that's amazing is the reveal of Thor's hammer in the crater at the end of Iron Man 2. So
that's good.
That'd be my 2.
Those are good.
Golly, dude. Ugh. If I could relive that moment as a kid. As a kid, it's 2008. I was 13.
That's a kid.
So, was that right? 2005? Yeah. So, oh, man.
That's good.
I was probably 12.
All right. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, back to your regular programmed scheduled programming.
Your regularly programmed scheduling.
The ascension empowers us to maintain unity.
Yeah.
And serve in the church.
So this is back to Ephesians. And we heard there's an amazing sermon on this that Andrew Wilson gave at the Gospel Coalition this year about Ephesians 4. And he talks about how Ephesians 4 is a chiasm, which just means the easiest way that I can explain this is the Harry Potter books are a chiasm. Number 1 and number 7 are directly thematically related. Number 2 and number 6 are directly thematically related. Number 3 and number 5 are directly thematically related, and 4 stands on its own. It's the center of the chiasm.
You see this in the Psalms a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of Psalms that are
so it's like A, B, B, C, C, D.
Yeah, coming, and so there's one idea, the very middle, and then everything cascades down from that, and they relate.
It's like a pyramid.
Yeah, like a mountaintop, right? Yeah. Is how Andrew Wilson talked about it, and how Ephesians 4 is a mountaintop, is a chiasm, and the middle of the chiasm is this parenthetical statement that Paul makes about the ascension, and so two of the things he highlights in that chapter are the unity of the church and the gifting of the church, and there's other things he talks about in there too, but this is the middle.
This is the thing that stands on its own?
No, the ascension is the thing that stands on its own.
Okay.
So the ascension is the mountaintop, and then you have unity and gifting and some other stuff in there.
Yeah.
But I thought these two were particularly application for the ascension, and this is how Paul uses them. It says, because the ascension is true, we can have, by the power of the ascension and the resurrection, but he just mentions the ascension in this section in Ephesians 4. We can have unity. We can maintain unity in the body. And so first, it's not that we can gain unity. Mm-hmm. It's like we've been given unity, but by the power of the ascension, we can maintain it.
Yeah.
And so that means God, I talked about, it's like God knew we were not going to be unified. So he gave us the most powerful thing he could think of to help us maintain unity. Mm-hmm. And then later on in the chiasm, it also talks about how, and this is the part of a very famous part of Ephesians 4, one baptism, one faith, one God, right? So that there's all that unity. And then later on in Ephesians 4 is when he talks about how, and to some we're given apostles and I can't even remember
prophets
and evangelists and all those things, so all these giftings. And so what Paul is saying is, hey, you local expression in Ephesus, local body in Ephesus, you guys need to maintain unity. You guys can. I know you can maintain unity because of the ascension. And I know that you're all gifted to serve one another in specific ways because of the ascension. Mm-hmm. That's what he's saying in Ephesians 4.
So I want to talk about unity for a second. What do you see? What are some of the biggest things you've seen disrupt the unity in a church or amongst Christians even?
Well, right now, I would say politics.
Yep.
And so we can't agree even with, so I think used to that we had the illusion of the past, pre-2016, extrapolate what happened then on your own terms. But pre-2016, we had the illusion of unity because we essentially said, as the evangelical church in America, you have to be a Republican to be in our church. So we had the illusion of unity, right? Because that's kind of which it's not wrong in all the sense. Like I think Republican and conservatism largely aligns with moral demands of Scripture. So don't hear me say like that was horrible and wrong or whatever. Yeah. But I think we had the veneer of unity, And then 2016 happens, and what it means to be Republican, what it means to be conservative kind of comes into question. And if you couldn't agree on that, I think that caused a lot of disunity.
Yeah.
And then even then, as that has pushed people left and pushed people right, there's even more disunity.
The extremes are becoming more extreme.
Yeah. And so I think, to say, hey, Jesus' power is far above all of that power, we can actually disagree with that stuff and be unified as brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Vote Democrat, vote Republican. We can be unified around the resurrected and ascended Jesus.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we have to agree. Just means we have to love one another, be kind to one another, treat one another as Jesus would treat us.
Yeah.
Kind of Romans 8, all that, all the ways he lists there. Or Romans 12, all the ways he lists there to love and care for one another as brothers and sisters. But I also think, that's kind of outside the church. Inside the church, money.
Yeah.
I think the number one thing that causes division in churches is disruption of tradition.
Oh yeah.
And so like people have expectations because
we've always done
this.
Yeah.
And so I had texted you and Nathan, there's like a growing trend online for when church members don't get their way. There's got to be some organization out there helping them. It's like what they do is they make a documentary about their church and how like their pastor is like took over the church or was whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been the new way to like express.
And when you see that, your immediate thought is, oh my gosh, what did that pastor do?
And it's always the same thing.
And he
watch
it.
This ministry that I love.
He stopped doing the WMU.
Yeah, he ended the quilt ministry. He redecorated the children. That was literally one I just watched was like he redecorated the children's ministry spaces. He got rid of the quilt ministry.
Yeah.
All this stuff, right? And so it's just like there's expectations because we've always done stuff this way.
Yeah.
And then when that
and
stuff
I like that thing.
Yeah. And so when that stuff is taken away, I'm mad and I'm not gonna deal with that disappointment in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Or even the disagreement on the decision in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go make a documentary on YouTube about it instead of loving my pastor through it and having conversation with
people really struggle with the thing of like something can be good and we don't have the time, resources, or whatever to do that thing.
Or it doesn't fit in our vision or our strategy, right? And so, yeah. So I think that's the number one thing.
Those are good answers.
It's like, hey, we've always had the flags on stage.
Oh yeah.
And so why are we taking the flags down? It's like, you could make every biblical argument that you're convinced of till you're blue in the face. And some people are just going to say, but we've always done it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think there's multiple things, that unbiblical things that, it's like if I go to a church and someone's like, yeah, we're just not going to preach every week because, we don't think it's good, X, Y, or Z. It's like, no, the Bible itself says we need to preach.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question.
every week.
What are the things we should break unity over?
Well, I think first tier issues, right? So if you're going to a church and they preach that Jesus didn't bodily resurrect, leave.
Yeah. Like define first tier issues for everybody.
So three, you got what's it? I can only think of the word morphology. Triage. Theological triage. Got 3 layers. So third tier issues, I would say, are issues we can have fellowship within a church together.
And disagree about them.
Second tier issues, I think we are all still Christians, but we maybe, because of our faith and practice, need to separate just for practical
Denominational
reasons.
distinctives usually.
Yeah. So like one of the ones that I'm becoming less convinced of is a second tier issue. I think it's maybe a third tier issue, but is traditionally used as a second tier issue is baptism.
Fascinating.
So we baptize infants. Well, we baptize
only
believers by immersion. So like just practically, it's hard to do ministry together on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing more and more churches that are actually doing both.
Yeah.
For those who are convinced one way or the other, which is interesting.
No, but what's interesting, even within those churches, they typically only do the credo, the Baptist, and the Presbyterian view. They're not baptizing anyone in the Lutheran view
or the Catholic sense. Yeah, exactly right.
So they're still making it a
But then first tier issues are like, this is what makes you a Christian, right?
Yeah.
Faith.
You must believe these things.
Jesus. The Jesus of the Bible, right? Who was crucified, he died. The
Apostles' Creed, yeah.
So it's like if someone is like, if they think the ascension is mythology or just like not real, like run, don't walk out of the church, right? And so like if they can't affirm the creed in its entirety, I would either leave or be highly suspect.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I would say. So that's, you should break unity over those things.
Yes, that's good. Okay.
And also, sorry, one more thing. If you are going to cause disunity because of something, I think maybe the argument could be made you should leave.
Dude, so one of our mutual friends was telling me he's got people in his church who have been going for 20, 30 years.
And never gone to service.
Have been teaching Sunday school and never go to service because they didn't like the previous pastor.
And they don't like him.
And they don't, or they haven't given him a shot, don't like him, whatever. And it's like, man, if you're upset about something, just find a church where you're going to be happy.
Yeah. That's like, I mean, the church I grew up in Texas, our Sunday school attendance was higher than our service attendance. Because people, and I'm like, go to another church.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
craziness. Unity,
so unity and service.
The ascension of Jesus means we can have peace in all things. Mm-hmm. No Jesus, no peace. No Jesus, no peace.
It's very protesty.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds like.
It's a bumper sticker.
But yeah, I think it's intentional on Luke's part, telling the story of the ascension and the way he does, and then in Acts 7, telling the story of Stephen and what happens to him. You know, that Stephen is being martyred.
Yeah. And
the thing that gives him peace is not the resurrection, is not the crucifixion, is not the incarnation, it's the ascension. Mm-hmm. He looks upon the ascended Jesus sitting at the right, actually standing. I didn't get to talk about this, but like showing deference, showing honor. Oh,
the king has stood for him.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So it's like he's seated, right? I talked about he's seated because the work is finished, but at Stephen's martyrdom, he stands.
Wow.
And it's like in the West Wing when
best show on earth.
President Bartlett comes in a room, and I think this is a scene where actually he does this like really lame speech about why being gay is okay according to the Bible. Yeah. It's like it's actually a terrible speech that I would love to be like, hey, it's the Luke Skywalker meme. It's like everything you just said is wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's lame. But then he ends the whole thing. He comes in the room and everyone stands up except for this woman that he's like dunking on with this speech. And then he ends the speech with, and when the president stands, nobody sits.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's like Mufasa, you know? And so it's kind of that idea. It's like Jesus, the president, you know, the king of the universe is saying, when a martyr is being martyred, nobody sits. Not even me.
It's sort of the opposite picture, but the picture in the same thing in Lord of the Rings at the end.
Oh, my friends. You bow to no one.
Oh gosh. And Aragorn takes a knee.
The king of Rohan, the greatest human the not of Gondor.
Yeah.
And the Rohanians will be angry that I said that. But it's like the greatest, you know, human nation.
Yeah.
On Middle
takes
Earth.
a knee to the hobbits for what they've done.
Who are forgotten.
Yeah. These
little folk.
Yeah. Woo. That's good, man.
My friends, you bow to no one.
Yeah.
He kneels. It's so good.
Yeah. Which I've often heard talk about when Jesus is washing the disciples' feet, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of that picture too. But I like that when, you know, Jesus is standing to give honor to Stephen.
But so then, like, what does that mean for us, right? Like, we're not getting martyred. You know, we're not getting stones thrown in our head. But we are facing the hardship of life, the actual everyday things. And I didn't talk about this in the Jesus is ruling, but this is another Tim Keller quote, is, you know, it's like, it's good news that Jesus is ruling because we know reality is governed by a human being and not a fallible human being, but a human being that knows what it is to suffer.
Yeah.
That he knows how hard it is to live on earth.
Yeah.
And he rules accordingly.
Yeah.
And so then, like, when we can have peace, you know, when we're in conflict or we're embarrassed or we have unmet expectations or whatever it may be, it's like we can look to the ascended Jesus and trust that he's ruling according to all the things he knows about what it means to be human. So he's not, you know, Zeus, you know, distant, impersonal.
I was just trying to think of a movie that kind of picture this, and a little bit The Matrix.
Yeah, Neo.
It's like you've got the machines that are ruling over us, but we want to break free of that because we want somebody who's like us.
Yeah, exactly right. No, that's yeah. Man, I feel like we've talked about the Matrix a lot.
We have a little bit, yeah.
Gosh, it's so good.
It is. Okay, so we've got some questions.
Okay, I want to send a.
We have a confession.
I want to send a sorry to anyone who's been asking a question like for the last 2 months because something happened with our email server and we had to change our emails, and that means that all of the emails I get when people ask questions were bouncing, and so I didn't get any of them. So there were about 10 questions that we had not seen for like the last 2 months.
We didn't ignore you intentionally.
Yes. But luckily,
it is fixed.
Luckily, about 8 of those were meme questions from either Nathan or Nate. So we actually don't have to talk about them.
But it is working again.
One of them was like, El Shaddai is such a great song. Who's that by again? Because Brent always erroneously says El Shaddai is by Rich Mullins.
But the questions are working. Please ask them.
Please send a question in on the app. It's working again.
So here's one. Was the ascension a private revelation only to those present, or could it have been visible to anyone in the vicinity? A passerby.
What do you think? I already have my answer. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah, I think it just happens. Anybody can see it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And it's certainly not. I struggle specifically with the term private revelation because we know it happened. So it's not that private.
Yeah.
No,
but the event itself, I guess.
Yeah. Dude, what the heck?
What are they doing?
Dude, aliens. Do you think anyone thought it was aliens? Do they have any concept of aliens?
Probably not.
Whoa. Someone did ask me after the service, how fast did Jesus go? Like, just boom. Or someone's like, did he have to achieve terminal velocity? It was like, it's pretty funny.
Are the angels carrying him? Are they flapping?
No,
their
it's
wings?
I think it's the cloud.
Clouds.
It's almost like a tractor beam.
Yeah.
No, not really.
So everybody can see it.
Yeah, I think everyone could have seen it. It's like the pillar of fire and of smoke of cloud.
Yeah.
Right it's like I think everyone could.
Could you imagine just some guy kind of walking by? What is this? Going, oh my gosh, what is happening?
It's like that poor guy didn't get told what was going on because the apostles were too busy staring up.
That's so funny.
That guy was probably staring up too.
All right, we have a very long question.
Oh, is this the one about the timeline?
The timeline.
Okay, I literally had to make a note.
What
in my notes
sort
app
of timeline do we have for how Jesus spent his 40 days between resurrection and ascension? We're told that on his first day he was at the tomb, then on the road to Emmaus, and then he went to the locked room with the disciples. But then it is 8 days later before he appears again in the locked room with the addition of Thomas. And then the third time at the shore of the Sea of Tiberias, with all the scripture references. Appreciate that. Where was Jesus for all of the in between days?
Okay. Well, let me answer the first the timeline question. So it seems like a lot of the things we have going on happen on the first day. Mm-hmm. So the disciples and Mary coming to the tomb. The road to Emmaus takes place on the first day. Also, there's a mentioned the guys coming back from Emmaus mentioned that Jesus has appeared to Peter independently. Uh-huh. So we don't know about that meeting, but we know it happened. So that all and then appearing to the disciples except for Thomas on that day.
Yeah.
So that's all day one. Then this whoever wrote this question, I actually know who it was. A couple of days later,
Nathan
appears to Thomas and the disciples in the upper room. It's locked, by the way.
Yeah, teleported in.
Jesus teleports in, and then there's just some time between then that we don't know exactly when it happened. It just happened between day 8 and day 40 on the resurrection, right? So appearing to the sea, at the Sea of Galilee, the Tiberias, with feed my sheep, feed my sheep. We talked about last week. And we know he appeared to five. So I actually misinterpreted this, but Paul doesn't just say he appeared to 500 people. He says 500 people at one time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, where do you think that happened?
There was some gathering at some point with over 500 people, and Jesus was like, hey. So I don't know. I'm assuming it would be in Jerusalem or
Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe there were 500 people in this locked room. Maybe it was a big room.
Well, I think it's 120. I think we know that. What? Or at
in
some
the
point.
room. In the room.
At some point, we know
I
there's
was like-
120
I was like,
people.
100 what do you-
Maybe at
it's- I was
Pentecost
like,
we
it's
know.
500. Oh,
Yeah.
120. Yeah. So that happens, and
But I have seen. I heard someone talk about this recently.
but he also appears to James at some point.
Yeah.
We know that
Yeah.
from 1 Corinthians and the book of James. So
There's I can't remember the point this guy was making, but he talks about how there's 500 probably in this room where Jesus appears to, but between that, the ascension, or between that moment and then Pentecost, it's dwindled to 120.
interesting.
I have to go look that up. I can't
Fascinating.
remember what he was saying, but
It sounds like I'd preach.
he was preaching.
But then that leads, so we can make a rough timeline harmonizing all the
Yeah.
gospel accounts. The other question is, I think, a little more interesting. Like, where was he
Uh-huh.
and it's just like, I don't know.
It's just meandering about.
And it's like, I actually don't know that he has to, this is going to sound crazy, but I don't know that he has
that's
to
crazy.
be anywhere. Like, I think he could potentially be time traveling. Like,
What?
For what? So, like, think about a time travel movie. From the protagonist's perspective, you experience everything sequentially.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Marty McFly, you experience.
Yeah.
But so so let's just take the first Back to the Future. He's in 1985. He goes back to 1955. You meet his family at the beginning of the movie in 1985. He goes back in time, 1955, changes stuff, comes back to 1985. And even though Marty has experienced all these days in 1955, his family has only experienced, an hour or so of
Yeah.
him being gone. So I think potentially what could be happening is Jesus is appearing for Jesus, however his
Yeah.
omniscience of his experience works, is appearing to them because he's not bound by time
Yeah.
in this sense. So for them, it could be, 1 day, 8 days, 40 days later, but it's like Jesus is actually just doing it sequentially for him
Yeah.
and then ascending and then is like extra temporal, omnitemporal or whatever. But I think what's maybe more likely is Jesus is probably going to North America to preach to the Native Americans.
People gonna believe you. Stop. We don't believe that's Mormons.
Don't call them that.
What are that? Oh, Church of Latter-day
Oh, you
Saints.
said Mormons. I
Yeah.
thought you said something else.
Morons.
That's me. I shouldn't say that. That's mean. But yeah, I actually don't know. So some people, I didn't do a deep dive into this, but believe that there was like a secret ascension, that Jesus ascended, and then he was bodily in heaven, and then was sort of just like blipping back. So to see Peter,
Yeah.
to see Mary, to see the apostles, to see
Yeah.
whoever.
Well, he certainly does that with Paul later on
Maybe.
the road to Damascus. I mean, he
Well,
appears to Paul
or the veil between heaven and earth is opened like
I was
like
saying,
it is for Stephen.
Yeah.
It's like, so Jesus actually doesn't come back to earth. So, but I don't actually know, nor do I think it really matters, but
Sure.
it is interesting. But it's also, we know Jesus can like hide his appearance.
Yeah, they don't
So
recognize
he could
him.
he could actually just be chilling.
He could be in the upper room with them and they don't know.
Yeah. And they don't know it. Like, it actually kind of seems like maybe that's what happens is because
And he's like, boom, here I am.
it's not even like he pops in and everyone notices, like, whoa, Jesus here.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, it's like he arrives and no one notices until he talks.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, Jesus, you're here?
Yeah.
You here?
You here?
That's what Lewin used to say.
Yeah.
They say, you here? Right, you here?
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yes.
They say, Jesus, you here?
Yeah. That's so funny.
So I don't know, but it is a fascinating question. But this is my gut, no theological underpinnings, really, biblical verses to cite. I don't think he's like going back and forth.
Yeah.
And my only reason for saying that is because it undercuts
They're going up.
the ascension. It undercuts the moment of the ascension.
Yeah, I
If you're
feel
just, like, blipping back and forth. So, but I also think it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like Jesus doesn't have to kill 24 hours. It's like, okay, now I have 7 days to wait before I can appear to Thomas.
Yeah.
So I better just wait. No, he can just like, all right, and here I am, and go and not miss any time or whatever because he's not bound by time. So
Last question.
Brent's favorite topic. If you ever want to have a 2-hour conversation with Brent, just ask him if God is in time or not. And it's game over for you.
Make sure you have 2 hours.
Say bye to your 2 hours.
How could Jesus ascend to heaven when he is omnipresent and was already there?
Yeah, what would you say?
You keep doing that. You keep throwing it to me.
It's because I already have my answer. So.
Well, I think what I would say is that Jesus is already in heaven. He's also in hell, and he's omnipresent everywhere, but not bodily. Mm-hmm. The ascension is particularly his body's movement, while his I don't know what you call his non-body, his spiritual sense, like his non-physical sense, whatever you call that.
Yeah.
That is everywhere, but his body's in a one
but
spot.
Not his, like, I don't know. I struggle with like his soul or
Does
his
he have
spirit.
a soul?
Yeah. If he's truly human, he has a soul.
Fascinating. I don't even really know what a soul is.
I was like, I mean, it's your soul. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in some sense, in Genesis 1 or 2, when God breathes into Adam's nostril, it says the literal language in the Hebrew is that he becomes a living soul. And so there's a sense in which the soul is like the life force. Maybe.
I'm using
the living force.
It surrounds us all. It binds us. It's also microscopic organisms in your bloodstream. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, what was the question? Sorry, I started thinking about Star Wars.
How could he ascend to heaven when he's already there?
This is actually, I think this is an easier question than
I just made it out to be.
Well, than it appears. We actually have Christianity has a really great theology of God being everywhere and particularly somewhere.
Oh, this is true, yeah.
And so, yes, God is omnipresent, but he's in the Old Testament, God is particularly in the garden, let's say.
Yeah. Or the temple.
Or the tabernacle, or, And so we have actually really, the Bible is actually full of God being particularly places. And so,
I like to actually use the word especially, I feel like.
See, I feel like, for me, especially feels like he's everywhere, but most of him is right here.
Oh, see, that's what I think about particularly.
Oh, fascinating. See, it's like, I just did the thing you do. Fascinating. Because especially feels like a lot of.
Yeah, particularly feels like he's not really in those other places.
Oh, no. See, it's like he is.
Yeah. We need a third word.
Yeah.
He's everywhere, but he's
how about
uniquely here. I like that.
He's uniquely in the temple. Yeah. Uniquely in, and that's ultimately what the incarnation is about. He's uniquely.
Mm-hmm. He's here in a way that he's not in other places.
Yeah. In the person of, he is everywhere, but he's uniquely here in space and time in the incarnation in the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying he's not in heaven. I'm not saying he's not in hell or anywhere, North America or whatever, but he's uniquely in the ancient Near East, near Palestine, are people going to like take that politically that I said that?
Palestine didn't exist
near then. Israel, Palestine, whatever, that area in the first century. And now he is uniquely in the spiritual realm we call heaven.
Yeah.
So,
man, a lot of metaphysical talk today.
Yeah. Much to learn you have.
Oh. And Star Wars talk.
I like that. Reminds me of, man, Yoda was so much better when he was a Muppet.
Oh, yeah. He's a Muppet.
I mean, a puppet. He's not a Muppet.
Yeah, you're not. Well, could be. You got anything else? Before I read this outro?
No, I don't know. I feel like I had so much to talk about because there was so much about the ascension I did not cover. But seriously, go read the book of Ephesians. If you like the sermon and you think the ascension is interesting and you want to know more about it, go read the book of Ephesians. Paul talks about it all over. So there's your next. For more reading, go to
recommended reading
the book of Ephesians.
Thanks for joining us for the recap. We hope this conversation has encouraged you to keep striving to make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. If you aren't a part of our church family, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning. We gather for worship at 10:30 a.m. For more information, you can go to myfellowship.church. Be blessed.
Thanks for listening.